I remember getting off work the day of the Bastrop fire. The wind was blowing, it hadn't rained, it was 100 degrees, and I just remember thinking, this is bad.
We're going to start this morning in Texas, where a series of fierce wildfires has much of that state on edge. The worst right now is in Bastrop, Texas. It's near the state capital of Austin.
It was eye-opening for all of us, for the entire department, for the entire city, and it was a big deal, and it really changed, the way everything around wildfire was looked at and discussed in the Austin area.
The city of Austin is a thriving city. We're growing really fast. We have a lot of green space, a lot of places that are at risk of wildfire.
Austin's about 290 to 325 square miles. But most visitors, when they visit Austin, they just travel downtown Austin, see all the high-rise buildings, the concrete structures.
The part of the city that I represent is in the WUI, the Wildland-Urban Interface.
It is where homes and communities intermingle with wildland vegetation. More than 1 in 3 homes is located in a wildfire-prone area, making it one of the fastest-growing land use types in the country.
We have a city that has a ring of wildfire risk around it, and many people are still not aware of their wildfire risk.
We're surrounded by trees and vegetation. So when you think about the risk here in Austin, being in proximity to the wildland area and Wildland-Urban Interface, we have to make sure that we educate our community on the risk that's out there, that you're familiar with your surrounding areas, because if you're not, you can easily start a wildland fire without even thinking about what you're doing.
So we've been trying to take a really systematic approach to our wildfire risk and really understand what we can control and what we can't control. And one of the things that we saw that we could control is how buildings were being built.
In Texas, we experienced catastrophic fast-moving grass fires. So we incorporated things like how quickly could a grass fire reach a wooden fence in East Austin? That may be just as much of a problem as someone on a ridgetop in West Austin. So how do we make the code equitable and apply to all areas at risk so all of our vulnerable populations were protected?
What used to be just a grass fire that wasn't a big concern, now it's threatening multiple structures.
The codes that we had about building could make a huge difference. And so we decided to look at the WUI code in order to make our community safer over the long haul.
A WUI code is one of the most effective strategies available to communities to reduce that risk to homes, neighborhoods, and infrastructure specific to wildfire risk. It's a regulatory tool to mitigate risk to the built environment. So it provides guidance on constructional materials, structural design, access for emergency vehicles, water supply, to some degree neighborhood planning. It ensures that mitigation actions are taken across the board and throughout a neighborhood.
Something that we identified and recognized early on is that we wanted to put a high priority on ensuring that we were equitable in our approach to mitigating wildfire risk. So we engaged Headwaters Economics to help us develop a wildfire vulnerability viewer. What this did is give us insight to not just the communities at risk from physical factors like fuel, topography, and weather, but those residents who are also at risk but have a more difficult time recovering in the event of a wildfire.
And we can say, listen, this is real. Here's the map. Here's the data, here's the number of structures, and the data brought it into reality, right? So that it's real then at that point. These are my constituents that are living in my district that are in a precarious situation that we need to do something to assist with.
Austin's desire to better understand the socioeconomic implications of increasing wildfire risk led to a national resource that's now available at Wildfire Risk to Communities, or wildfirerisk.org, that everybody can access to now identify which populations are going to be adversely impacted by increasing wildfires.
What this report did is give us the tools to have conversations with communities and community leaders to understand that it's a combination of risk and vulnerability that we're working to resolve to achieve our community's resiliency.
We were thankful that Austin Fire came forward really early on in the process. I think that's one of the most important things that made this process successful. I think the role that the construction industry plays is definitely a piece of the puzzle. It's a large puzzle that involves other elements, policymakers, city, county partners, but also neighborhoods, HOAs, and the individual homeowners themselves.
If you don't get community stakeholders invested in those codes, then you just got a bunch of words on paper in the books. stuck on a shelf somewhere.
Part of the process of getting people together and working with them is trying to figure out what the value is to each individual group. So what value is it talking about wildfire to, say, Parks and Rec or the utilities or roads and bridges, etc. If there's a value to them, they'll keep on showing up.
And I think for our developers in particular, there was a fear about the costs that would be involved and that this would be more costly.
We had a lot of concerns. Early on, we were visiting with Austin Fire and we said, what goals are you trying to accomplish?
The end goal is to have people thinking about wildfire throughout the process of all the things they do.
After having some conversations with them and said, these are the things that are most expensive, how can we meet your goals without sacrificing affordability? But the fact that we're able to pick up the phone and say, hey, we have this issue, can we have a meeting about it? And they're willing to take those meetings is really important to this process.
We had to really show proof of concept that this would not be more costly and that if you required some thought at the front end, you could make people safer, you could save them money on their insurance.
The crazy thing is, with all the things that we've seen over the last several years, wildfire wasn't even listed in the things you need to look at in the development process. Getting wildfire and evacuation routes added in and things like that for the land development code was also a big deal.
It's cheaper to have the WUI code than not to have it. It's best to have the insurance and not need it than to need it and not have it.
Austin is one of the largest municipalities to adopt a WUI code. Austin's successful adoption of a WUI code is inspiring for other communities that similarly want to take action to reduce wildfire risk.
We recognized early on is that it was best to demonstrate success. We engaged with our Austin Energy's Green Building program to develop a star rating for wildfire, and what that did is encourage builders and developers to voluntarily comply with wildfire safety standards, things like hardening your siding and roof and windows, appropriate landscape design, and they got credit for those best practices. It showed that it can be done.
A lot of what the code calls for, builders are already doing. What we learned was Austin Fire was really interested in trying to keep embers out of the home, so we started talking about gutters, eaves, soffits, things like that. So we kind of spent our time focusing on those things where there was overlap.
I think if you switch the conversation and say, what is the outcome you want? And then how do you start with the community? So the outcome you want is that you want people to stay there. You don't want people to lose their homes because when you only have one home and working multiple jobs to keep that home, it's not sustainable for you to lose that home. You don't have many options.
I think that over the years, we've raised the profile of the wildfire risk. We are making the case not only that they will be safer, but over time, the value of these investments by the developers or by the people making the renovations will be that much better because they will have the benefit of being ignition resistant.
I think the WUI code is not only important for the city of Austin, I think the WUI code is important for other cities like Austin.
This is not rocket science. You can learn how wildfire works. You can learn what it means in your community, and you can go out and you can tell the story for the community about the why and keep telling them what you're doing. Wildfire involves both the city or the county and individual action.
I have learned lessons from other fire chiefs because they have experience. So shame on me as the fire chief of Austin if I don't take heed to the lesson learned from other departments. Shame on you as a fire chief and elected official if you don't take heed on not having a WUI code. Shame on you if you don't take the time to research on what's the Wildland-Urban Interface, what's that's all about. Shame on you if you say, oh, it'll never happen to me. Because so many times, there's so many scenarios out there, what we have said in the communities we live in, oh, that never happened to us. Well, it will never happen in your neighborhood until it happened. Your school will never shut down until it shut down. Your business will never face a disaster until it faces that disaster.
I would also say that the way I look at a lot of these code-related items is how would you feel the next time there's a major fire in an area if you knew you didn't do everything you could to help improve the situation? You have an obligation to do things to improve your community safety, and it's a step that's attainable and something I think that given the right resources and the right attitude, I think could be done just about anywhere.